Welcome to Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge.
When it comes to email marketing, your subject line will make or break your campaign.
No matter how great your offer, if you can't get your lead to open your email, your efforts are wasted. And I hate wasted time.
Or worse, you could get tagged as spam.
No.
Fear not. We have some tricks up our sleeve,
Yeah.
to ensure your emails get opened.
And you stay out of the trash bin.
I don't want to be in the trash bin.
Nope.
This is Ryan Eldridge.
And this is Andrea Eldridge.
Welcome to Growth Marketer Academy.
This is episode 15 of the Growth Marketer Academy podcast.
I'm Ryan Eldridge, Chief Strategist of Squirrel Digital Marketing.
And this is Andrea Eldridge, Creative Director at Squirrel Digital Marketing.
So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about A/B testing and how to maximize the effectiveness of your landing pages.
We love optimizing for conversions and optimizing those conversions. And when it comes to an email campaign, you can't convert a lead that never opened your message, which is why your subject line is one of the most important components of any email campaign.
But who uses email anymore? A bunch of old people, right? It's a dead medium.
I know, a lot of people think that, but it isn't. By the end of 2017, there was an estimated 3.7 billion, which I always sound like I should say that like Austin Powers, billion email users. And to put that in perspective, Facebook has 1.9 billion users. So like 90% of adults in the US use email. It's the most popular online activity across all age groups. So it's not just old people. It's
Hold on, I
like
gotta check my
teenagers.
email.
Yeah, you gotta, and maybe some Facebook.
Okay.
It's everybody across all age groups. It's the most popular online activity for those people who use the internet. The better thing, really, when it comes to email is ROI, return on investment. That's my favorite from the money perspective.
Yes.
For every dollar spent on a successful email campaign, you can expect $38 in return. So if you do it right, email can be hugely profitable.
But you have to do it right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because otherwise,
See that
I'm
little
like,
disclaimer right there.
I got a few bucks. I can drop that on some email campaigns, make $38 each. Nice.
Except you got to do it right.
All right.
So starting with what we're talking about today, which is your subject line, that's like your first piece of the puzzle. If you don't have a subject line that gets that person to actually see your message, be intrigued enough to open your message, and actually take the effort to click, then you're dead in the water. It doesn't matter how great your offer is. It doesn't matter how great your product is. None of that's going to matter if you can't get them to at least just click it.
But how do you, okay, so I write this amazing email. It's got beautiful GIFs and pictures in it, and it's like little flowers and wonderfulness.
That sounds like a perfect
and
email.
I send it out to somebody. What's my open rate going to look like? What measurement am I using to measure my success?
Good question.
I know, because I read ahead.
Yeah. So open rate is really the key to this equation. That's how many people actually open your email. And the average open rate for an email campaign is 25%. So for every 100 messages you send, you can expect that 25 of them will get opened again if you aren't doing a super terrible campaign. But we think you can outperform that average, and you should certainly aim to outperform that average. So you should just use that kind of as your baseline benchmark. If you're getting lower open rates than 25%, then you've got some things that need to be addressed. If you're over that, then I wouldn't say work complete, because we feel like there's always room to improve.
That's when A/B testing comes in.
Yes, but I would say that that at least that you're not super messing anything up.
Okay, so when it comes to doing your email headlines, we should start with step number 1.
Yes, subject headline tip number 1, you like to call KISS.
Yes,
just KISS.
And back when we were kids, it was called Keep It Simple, Stupid. But now I hear that stupid isn't something we're supposed to say anymore.
Not according to my 6-year-old.
So now it's Keep It Simple, Silly.
Silly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm still down with stupid, but that's cool.
Catching.
Yeah.
So basically, this comes down to that clear and concise subject lines perform really well. You got to remember, the average person gets a junk ton of emails in a given day.
I have a feeling you know the exact number.
I do.
Really?
It's 121 emails a day for the average person.
Yeah.
A lot of those get sent straight to spam or junk or auto-archived. But if you happen to manage to get in front of the eyes of that person, you just have to remember how inundated and fatigued they probably are.
So if you remember, most people who are going to read a blog post or any kind of content you put online, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to scan it to see how much of a time investment they're going to have to put into this. They do the same thing with their emails. And so if they're getting an email from a company that they have a mild interest in, if your subject line is, 47 words long with a subheading line and then, that's going to be insane. So what you want to do is make them short and sweet, nice and easy to read, something they can consume within just a glance in a line at Starbucks.
Yeah. In fact, MailerMail recommends that you limit your subject lines to 28 to 39 characters. They did some studies based on open rates and the effectiveness of subject lines, and that was kind of the sweet spot. So if you missed that the first time around, that's 28 to 39 characters. I know it can sound tedious to count those out, but do yourself a favor and actually check some of the length of your subject lines. There's a couple reasons why it's important.
Yeah, well, first of all, how many people consume email only on one device, right? I look at my email on my phone. I look at it on my computer. I look at it on my tablet. So I'll see my emails in several different places. And the way that email is presented to me is going to be different in each one of those devices.
Right.
And so if I'm on a little tiny screen on a iPhone, in the line at Starbucks, that's going to get really short and truncated. Whereas if I'm on my desktop, I can see a nice big long subject line. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and so like you're basically saying there, short subject lines are definitely a better experience for those looking at email on an iPhone or a mobile device of any sort. And that's a huge swath of the email using population these days gets their email on their phone. Long subject lines can get truncated, so it can drop off important words. So if you spend, 3 taxing hours contriving this perfect subject line and that it's too long, and so what the person actually sees is just the first 6 words of it's so important that you read and that's it they see. It's like at that point your efforts are wasted.
So we are going to add an image into the show notes, and so you'll kind of see what we're talking about. There'll be several emails there, and you'll see a couple in there that we've highlighted that show where they've been cut off in mobile, whereas you'll see some other subject lines that are much smaller and shorter and easy to read. Yeah,
so you can kind of see a good email on mobile experience versus a not so great experience on mobile. Tip number two, arouse emotions to motivate action. So basically, the key here is that people make decisions based more on emotion than logic. I mean, as I'm a pretty logical person, I like to think that I don't fall into that category, but I do. We all do. So okay.
That was on purpose. Go ahead. We'll hold hands.
No.
Okay,
thank
go
you.
ahead. No. Okay.
All right. So one powerful emotion that tends to drive people's actions is fear of missing out. This would be something where, you given essence of time or limited availability in a subject line, it's going to kind of engage that emotional response of saying, oh, well, I don't really want to not have my opportunity if this really is a good deal. So you'd use that subject line to trigger a feeling of urgency or loss aversion. So you can do this by hinting at time sensitivity. You can mention an upcoming deadline. You can refer to limited time remaining to take advantage of an offer or limited number of remaining slots available. Your intent here is to get readers to act fast and to click through your email. You're going to use phrases like today only or get this deal before it's gone. I know that we see these all the time and you think, okay, really, does it really work? These types of subject lines, those that create urgency, actually get a 22% higher click-through rate according to Email Institute.
Email Institute, that is my go-to place for information about click-through rates.
You always ask me for sources, so I tried to add them in this time.
We'll put sources in the show notes so you can kind of see that we don't make these up. Although it sounds like we do, because Email Institute, it sounds like I created that 2 minutes ago and put it up there and justified my knowledge of click-through rates.
But my tip here would be don't overdo it. I think we all can feel like the boy who cried wolf a little bit when you get a little too much. Like if every message that you send to your lead is like, for today only, or act now, at a certain point, they're going to get just fatigued from this messaging.
This is the 17th time you've told me that I'm going to miss out, and I'm just, okay, I'm fine. I'm missing out.
That's okay. In fact, I'm going to miss you so much when I put you in spam. So the alternative here would be you can create that same sense of emotional response by opening what we would term a curiosity loop. So I'll let you kind of explain what that is.
So curiosity loop is when you say something like, I mean, you see this in television all the time, like the cliffhanger episodes, right?
Yeah.
So you're watching a show and all of a sudden you're like, oh, look at that Flash. He's running so fast and he's going to save the day and the girl's going to, all of a sudden it ends, right before Flash does something or somebody shot him or something like that. And you're like, is somebody going to survive? You have that urgency to find out what happened next. So you watch next time on such and such. You see what's going to happen.
And it just hints, right? But it doesn't give you the full story.
And so you tune in next week because your mind absolutely has to know what happened, especially if you're interested in the subject line. Like if you're watching Flash, you might be interested in that, or Game of Thrones or something.
I was going to say, we might have to change the subject or the TV show if you're going to give me a sense of urgency. But yeah, gotcha. Okay.
So it's the same thing. What you want to do is create a sense of urgency and open that loop that they absolutely must know the answer to further down in your email. So your subject should create some sort of intrigue, generate interest without giving away everything. So you could say something like, have you ever had this problem? Tell me about it. Or your brain ultimately wants resolution and closure to whatever the subject you're opening, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I've seen this a lot pretty effectively when it's things like, the top 3 industry analysts know this secret, do you? That sort of thing. Like, it seems like almost what we would term clickbait these days, but yet a little more subtle than that.
BuzzFeed does a really good job. They'll say like, here's the 3 things you should know before Mother's Day, and number 2 will surprise you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, what is that?
What is number 2?
Yeah.
I thought I knew all of the things for Mother's Day.
87% of doctors know that you will die of this disease. Do you?
Yeah, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. Well, or, Nightly News does the exact same thing. There's something deadly in your refrigerator. Tune in at 11.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, what the hell?
Wait,
what's wrong with my refrigerator? Yeah.
I mean, and ultimately what this comes down to is your brain wants resolution and closure. And so your subject line, if it can open a loop to initiate that interest, the recipient is going to want to close that loop by clicking and seeing the body of your message and figure out the answer to this stirring question that you just implanted in their brain.
And when we go beyond subject lines, this is something you also do in your normal body of your email too. You might say, hey, I'm going to tell you about this great, amazing, blah, 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 but I'll get to it in a minute. First, I'm going to talk about this. And then your brain's like, oh, okay, I need some resolution at some point. So I'll read the next paragraph to find out what you're saying. And then I expect you to resolve this. And then usually you open up a curiosity loop for your next email message. So you say something like, and next week I'll tell you more about, whether or not, Fifi lived through that harrowing experience. You're like, who the hell was Fifi?
Funny story, actually. As you're saying this, I'm remembering that this is hugely popular with Stephen King. I noticed this in his writing recently, that we recently read a few of his novels for a book club that I'm in, and it was so funny because he'd end a chapter with little did Fred know that it was the last time he'd see Harry alive. And you were like, wait, what? So something happens, and then it would instantly compel you because you knew that next chapter was going to explain this random statement he just made out of nowhere, where you were like, but no, what?
And then it's 4 a.m. and you're 400 pages in. You're like, son of a gun.
Yes,
I just need to go. Okay.
But really, if you do this effectively in email, it can cause kind of a milder version of that same drive. You're just looking to drive the compulsion to click and open that message.
Yeah. Because that's really ultimately the job of the subject line, is to get them to take the next action. You're not trying to sell them the offer. You're not trying to sell them your branding. You're not trying to get them to do anything other than click through so that way they can see your message.
Right. Tip number 3, be personal and friendly.
Like you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do try.
You are personal and friendly.
So keep in mind that when it comes to emails, the ones that we look forward to receiving are not the shopping offer from Kohl's or the your interest rate has dropped on your mortgage. Those are like, all right. We look forward to getting email from friends and family. And those messages are people we know. They will often refer to us by our first name. They're engaged with us on a personal level. And so, again, going back to the emotionality of driving this click, when you can personalize your message in a way that makes it feel unique to that recipient, it's going to engage that kind of like, oh, okay, this is something I want to see, not something that's being sent to everybody. So one way of doing personalization that is pretty popular these days is adding the recipient's name into either the subject of the message or somewhere in there. And we're talking about subject lines at this point. So, and subject lines that personally address a recipient do get a 30% higher click-through rate than those that do not. And this is according to Experian Marketing Services. So,
and something to keep in mind, you're not going to write, let's say you've got an email list of a small email list of 1,000 people. Let's just say it's a really tiny list. You're not going to literally type in everybody's name into that email list. So if you're not used to doing email marketing, you're going to use an email marketing service. Or like MailChimp, you can use Constant Contact, things like that. Or you can get into the big boys, you can get HubSpot, or you can try some of the freer versions like MailerLite, things like that. We can give you a whole list if you're interested. But ultimately, you're using these automation services where it will take the name from your list and add it to it using just an operator rather than having to type everybody's name in. So if you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to type in everybody's name.
Yeah. The one thing to keep in mind if you do that method, though, is that you have to ensure that in your list you have a first name or whatever name category like column you're pulling from. You have to make sure that every entry has some value in that cell for that bit of data, because otherwise it's going to be one of those really weird messages to the recipient where it says, hey, $, have you seen our offer? And they're going to be like, wait, what?
I like it when it says, hey, and then it's in brackets, it says first name.
Yeah, right.
Comma.
That's my favorite too.
Hey, first name. Yes.
So personal.
That's like the mail you get at your house that says to current resident. Very important.
Right. You're like, it's so important. It goes to everybody. So So keep that in mind if you're using email automation, which you should be, but if you are going to utilize coded personalization.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say as a warning here is that so many marketers are using this name method at this point to personalize their email that people are really starting to associate this with spam. Yeah. At least I do, in my opinion. Like, I know that this, random person who I've never heard this email message before doesn't really know me. And so if anything, it makes me kind of even more suspicious to like, why are they referring to me as, hey, Andrea? Because frankly, my friends never do say, hey, Andrea in the subject line.
That's true.
So consider instead giving other personalization cues. One suggestion here would be tying your personalization to the recipient's location. Mm-hmm. So you could say something like best coffee house in Carmichael or the secret to saving on home insurance in Spokane. This would be something that, again, tells that recipient that it's relevant to them without seeming super spammy.
Yeah, and we did a test once to find out what was our better people clicking through our offer when we put the name in the message as well as in the subject line. And we found that in the subject line, putting the name in there works pretty well. And then if you do down below where you normally be like, hey, Andrea, comma, and then you'd say your thing. Mm-hmm. We tried hey, we tried hi there, we tried hi, and we tried the name. And the word hi, H-I, that's it, worked the best. So, because you're right, most people are going to go like, Dear Andrea. Like, how many people write that? I know I do, but how many people really write that in an email when they're writing an email and says, Dear so-and-so?
For me, I actually usually start with hey there.
Yeah.
You're hey there. So I need this information. Can you help me out? So, I think it varies from person to person. Tip number 4, add some visual jazz.
Like music? How do you make music visual? That's weird.
So these days, some marketers have started adding emoji to their subject lines, which I'm not sure if I'm totally down with it, but the statistics seem to indicate that it can at least cause that subject to be visually catching, visually engaging. It seems like there was a while there where like this was happening really frequently and I was getting a lot of messages with emoji in them, and then it kind of tapered off. So there was a big push there for a while where marketers were doing this to like, and it became instantly fatiguing where you were like, okay, dude, just delete. Yeah. Because I know, again, my friends aren't sending me emoji in their messages. And so usually it was kind of a quick visual cue, yes, that it wasn't someone I knew. And so, so just,
but
keep in mind, it's worth trying.
I've seen the lightning bolt that says flash sale next to it and things like that. They're kind of interesting. It
catches the eye.
Yeah, if I still am interested in the brand, if the brand hasn't ruined me yet, and I'm interested in what they have to say, the emoji will still, oh, okay, I see something. It'll at least attract my eye. But if it's a brand I've never heard of before, I didn't mean to engage with, I accidentally got on their list somehow. Yeah, I'm just gonna be like, oh, this is lame. It's not gonna help me.
the key here is to make sure that any emoji that you do use is relevant to your brand and relevant to your message. So just because it's a popular emoji does not belong. It doesn't mean it belongs in your subject line.
I put eggplant emojis on every email I send now because I think that that's just relevant all the time.
Because you like purple so
Yeah,
much.
that's
so it
it.
just kind of speaks to those who
Purple.
watch you on TV. So basically, you know, the benefits of emoji are they can be cute, they can be visually engaging, they can save you valuable real estate. We were talking about short subject lines. So if you've got something that conveys an instant, you know, like some sort of money.
Well, we give an
emoji,
example.
for example.
In the show notes, we're going to give an example of West Elm where it says how we celebrate International Women's Day. And then they have essentially 5 different faces of women of varying nationalities. And so it kind of like, it gives you a different sense of
It
just
causes
saying
you to pause and go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it can help your subject line get noticed in a crowded inbox, but badly placed emoji can negatively impact open rates. So this would be something like if it's an irrelevant emoji to your brand, for example, if it's something where like you're in a traditional industry, like say finance or construction, and you're using stuff that's kind of quirky and silly, then your audience isn't in that frame of mind.
Especially if
when
your
they're
brand
expecting-
if your brand is normally quite serious and you're like, hey, I want to talk to you about investing in gold because that's what I'm talking about. And you put a little bag of gold next to your subject line. It's kind of like, oh, that's super cheese.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
Also, keep in mind when it comes to emoji that not all of your recipients will be using the same email client. And if their email doesn't support emojis, it's going to convert it into that weird, unrecognized grouping of symbols. And there is no faster way to look like spam than sending a subject line with like a bunch of weird symbols.
But it sounds like we're really against it, but really emojis can be effective if you use them carefully. Just like anything else, if you're using their name and you're using emojis and you're like, oh, I'm just going to slam them with every one of these tips, you're not going to get great open rates. It's not like these are going to multiply. Oh, 30% open rates if I do these amount of characters. Oh, if I add emojis, I'll get another 20%. It's not, you're not going to get 1,050% open rates just because you're using all of these tips. Use them sparingly, consider it a conversation, and over the long haul, here's your name one, and a couple email messages later, here's an emoji, a couple email messages later, here's some urgency.
Yes. Yeah. So that is a very important key here, is that this is to give you, because over the lifespan of this customer, you're going to probably email them a multitude of times.
Yeah.
And if you do regular campaigns, it's going to be something where they're periodically getting messages from you 1 to 3. Some people send pretty regular messages.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you have an arsenal of different tools at your disposal to be able to make your subject line engaging enough to cause that recipient to open your message.
So tip number 5, we're going to talk about numbers and lists are your friends.
They can be.
Yeah.
I know. So
So just like BuzzFeed, where they say, here's the top 5 mistakes that every new wife makes. I have you email me. I'll tell you. Yeah. But or it could be like
good thing I'm not a new wife. By the way.
Yeah, 21 years. You tarnished a little. Anyway, if you say, or if it's like the 3 ways you can kill your lawn this summer, or 17 ways to save money on water and stuff like that. So BuzzFeed kind of it feels like BuzzFeed created it, but they probably didn't. But the mind is easier to see lists, and we see that, these are going to be short, quick, easy little tips, and it makes us more inclined to check it out. And
so this can counteract, or this can be counterproductive if you make your number too big. Just FYI, at least for me, if I saw something that was like 59 ways you can save money this summer, I'd be like, no.
Actually, in some ways, it can work if it's something that the target is totally interested in.
And you want to have a show value.
So like Digital Marketer does this one where they say, our 101 best blog titles, and you're like, oh, okay, well that's kind of, because probably 99% of those I'm not interested in. There'll probably be a couple of nice ones in there. And so you might download their little lead magnet to check that out. So
all right, that's fair.
In some cases it can. But yeah, if you're just trying to get them to consume something quick and it's like 1,467 ways for you to wear earrings, you're going to be like, okay, no, not interested.
The idea here is that the number and list makes the message seem more easily digestible. So 5 ways to help your kindergartner read proficiently. Top 10 French restaurants in Alberta. So you don't, want to go too crazy. But again, it's another good tool for your arsenal.
And the number should be numerical. It shouldn't
Yes.
be written out, because if you write 15 out, people, they're just going to, of your 28,
It's gonna
39.
just seem weird.
Yeah, it's just weird.
The other thing is just from a flow perspective, you want to put the number in the start of your subject line instead of at the end.
Take a look at our 15 best emojis for email open rates.
Yeah, then the value of the number is lost.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to keep in mind that just from a standpoint of the way our brains work, that having the number at the beginning is what intrinsically gives it that digestible value.
Yeah.
And psychologically, this is kind of a weird one, but it's true. Odd numbers like 5 or 7 or 3 are easier to remember than even numbers, and they have a 20% higher click-through rate.
Well, I'm not going to open up an email that says, get my 2 best tips for, no. But when they say 3 best tips, I'm like, yeah, I'm
You're
down.
in. Yeah.
I'm totally down for that.
Well, and even 6, you know what I mean, versus 5, it's weird. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just the way your brain works. It's like 5 goes, yeah, that makes sense. And then 6, you're like, I don't know.
When they say 2, you're like, come on, couldn't you just
Just pull
try
out
a
one
little bit
more.
harder?
Yeah,
I mean,
just pull
come
out
on.
one more. Tip number 6, focus on the benefits.
What is that? Oh, benefits.
Yes. So you
Email with benefits. I like that, actually.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about it.
in your subject line, you can cite common pain points to create an immediate interest in that recipient. So done well, readers are going to want to learn more because you're referring to a common problem that they likely have and saying that you have some sort of solution. So some examples of a universal pain point would be saving time or money or increasing profits. And instead of listing a feature, just be specific and tell them something that they care about.
Yeah. So if you're like, let's say you're selling squishy balls, because this seems to be really annoying to my wife this time. But if you're selling squishy balls and you just say, we have the best squishy balls because they're all white, that's a feature. There's no real benefit to that. But if you say these squishy balls eliminate stress, you're like, oh yeah, that's something I can benefit from. Or our squishy balls stay white longer. You're like, oh, I don't really care about that. But if you say our squishy balls will make you nice and happy, right? That might be okay. Well, hey, it makes me happy.
Hey.
Yeah, something to fidget with while you're on a podcast.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
So instead
Okay.
of something like how to increase your conversion rate, you could be specific and say increase your conversion rate by 50% in 1 week.
Yeah.
So it gives like a defined, specific benefit.
Specificity.
Yes.
I think that's the right word. Yes.
Tip number 7:
Social proof.
Yeah.
Social proof is cool because it's ultimately, we are all lemmings. I'm sorry to tell you, but
It's true.
We want to, like, when my wife, when we first started dating, we were in France and we were looking at restaurants, and I was like, oh, let's go to this one. This one's got like pizza. I love pizza. Let's go there. And she's like, there's nobody in there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go in there. And then we walked by this Chinese place, and I don't really care about Chinese food. And it was crowded. A Chinese place in France. And she's like, let's go there. I'm like, oh, why? And she's like, because it's super crowded. It's got to be good.
This is the Yelp mentality.
Yeah.
It's the reason that when you go to a new area and you pull out Yelp and you look for this restaurant had 7,000 people that said it was good.
Yeah.
This one only had 3. So even if all 3 of them liked it, I still want to go with the 7,000.
Yeah.
So it's just part of our nature. People conform to the actions of others. And so social proof creates an illusion that the behavior is correct if everyone else is doing it.
If all 7,000 people like one Chinese restaurant in France, it's got to be good.
Can't be that terrible, at least.
Well, unless they're giving away free food
Yeah, well,
or something.
yeah.
Right? Then okay.
So in psychology, this is what's known as social proof. And most successful brands include reviews or as seen on social proof on their landing pages or their product pages. It drives a sense of product reliability, brand reliability.
Yeah.
And so the question here would be, how do you include social proof in your subject line?
Well, you can do something like call out specific influencers in the market you're going after. So you could say, why Kylie Jenner likes my tea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that's true, because if you say that and she doesn't like it, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
Or you can say, why more than X number of people like to use my product, like to use this product, or five out of 7 dentists say that, and why it would always be 5 out of 7, but 5 out of 7 dentists say these will make your teeth whiter, right?
Or why, such and such anchor on this morning show, if you're feeling like you want to maybe promote a time when you've been featured, or why Good Day Sacramento loves our
Food. Let's go back to food. So a site that does really well with this is I get these emails constantly from Vegas.com that has different like deals that are happening every month. And when you look at one of the deals, it'll say, 10 people have taken this offer today, or 60 people have claimed this offer. I also see that on Retail Me Not does that a lot, if one of their coupon codes. And all of that tells you, oh, this is something that people are doing. This is normal behavior. I should also be part of this, right? And you're like, oh, okay. Plus, it makes us feel safer, right? If we're sticking our neck out there to do something, we don't want to get hurt by it, even if it's financially or psychologically or whatever. We want to be where it's safe, and it's safe where there's lots of other people and where other people are being treated nicely, right? We don't want to go someplace where people are treating us poorly.
Right.
Yeah.
So a good subject.
Keep going.
A good subject line has to grab a reader's attention and convince them that your email is important enough to warrant a click.
So you need to stand out from the crowd of other messages in their inbox.
For every email campaign, prepare at least 5 to 7 subject lines and analyze each subject line to figure out which one has the best click-through.
This will cue you in on the most effective subject lines for your audience.
Yes, that's true, because your audience is going to be unique from a different audience. That, a certain set of subject lines that may work for one of our clients aren't necessarily the same as what will work most effectively for another. And again, as you always say, it's all about the data. Mm-hmm. You want to continue to do your A/B testing with your email subject openings, keeping in mind that each offer is going to have a different rate of success and things like that. But you should be able to group your email subject lines in terms of style and what of these tips you maybe implement in one subject line over another. And if you find that urgency works well for your audience, but emojis don't, or personalization doesn't work for your audience, but creating a social proof reference in your message does. So, just kind of keep an eye on it as you try different methods. And again, that main key is a number of different subject lines for each of your email campaigns, so that for the same campaign, particularly if you come back to those campaigns over time, you can try different subject lines and test them against your champion and find your best pattern.
And if you listen to one of our previous episodes where we're talking about audience analysis, you can get to know that audience member a little bit better. And so you can segment that list out. And so you can send a different message to married females, a different message to the single men, or a different message to, the influencers. Who bought
this specific product line.
Exactly. And that way you can test each different subject line for each different segment of your list. So that way you can say, well, this one didn't work for, single females, but this one really worked for married men. So I'm going to make sure that I segment my list that way from now on.
Okay, folks. Well, that is it for today. Make sure to check out the show notes at squirreldigitalmarketing.com/podcast for links to the resources that we talked about today.
And if you're finding our podcast to be helpful or cool,
and who wouldn't,
be sure to rate it on whatever platform you're listening to it on, or even better, leave us a review.
Preferably a good one.
Yeah.
And be sure to tune in next week when we reveal some insider secrets to faster keyword research. Doesn't sound all that scintillating to me, but trust me, you don't want to miss it.
That sounds like a curiosity loop you just opened there.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Did you catch that?
Well, I'm Ryan Eldridge.
And I'm Andrea Eldridge.
Thanks for tuning in to Growth Marketer Academy.
This has been Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge.